Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, October 31st. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Penn State game in 2 days, the game against Michigan in 30 days. Today, we're going to be breaking down what went right and what went wrong for the Ohio State offense against Nebraska. This is one where typically these shows get more views. I think offense is more fun for people, but also the offense has been more good news than bad this season. So I think people probably enjoy those shows for that reason. Today, some good, some bad. It is Halloween, so it is appropriate. Things got a little spooky for the Ohio State offense against Nebraska. We're breaking it down with our buddy Ross Fulton, the X's and O's guru at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And when Ross is on the show, we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus, check out the menu, and make a reservation today. All right, Ross, we're going to start with a treat here. We'll get to some of the tricks later. Let's start with the first one, the long touchdown to Jeremiah Smith. I always have kind of like a running thing where I just run the Jeremiah Smith, do something cool play. They did that here, and it worked out great.
Yeah, I think from a general perspective, the sky is falling is probably too strong of a thought here. Obviously, Zen Walhalski struggled, right? And certainly in the first half, I do think he improved a little bit. I didn't clip those plays necessarily because I think, Joel Klatt pointed them out in the broadcast. He was getting beat inside. He kept oversetting outside to worried about, a speed rusher beating him, and that set him up to get beat inside. That said, there were other offensive line issues. It was certainly not Ohio State's best game. But, if you look at like Parker Fleming, what he does on X in terms of success rate, Ohio State's success rate was over Nebraska was pretty comparable to Oregon's over Illinois. So you have then bigger issues where you have two drives get into scoring territory with 0 points. You always have an interception. And as Ryan Day and Chip Kelly just continued to harp on over and over again, you had third down conversion and fourth down early issues. And not even so much like third long. We're talking like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 in both the run and pass game. And it really prevented them from getting in a rhythm. And so, as I said, but they early, right? So they get stopped on fourth down. They second drive again. As I said, it was not just Zen, like second drive, Tiger Shabola misidentified the linebacker who run right past him unblocked on outside zone. But they did come back and, again, like credit to Nebraska, they have a really complex scheme. It's kind of a 3-3-5. They'll play some off front, but they'll mix in some even front. They ton of stuff in the back end, some 3 high safety looks. And so, but that said, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day use some really good coverage beaters, which is just a fancy term for concepts that work really well against certain types of zone coverages. And so this one was one, and this is kind of becoming a trendy play you're seeing because Tampa 2, which is just cover 2 with a deep, pull runner. We've talked about Ohio State doing it with 3 high safeties here. Nebraska has become much more back into vogue. And so you're seeing this more and more, and it's basically just a 3 verticals concept, right? So we talk about zone beaters. It's like, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, you have 2 deep safeties, so you're going to run 3 guys vertical. So now you have 3 on 2, right? And so they can't cover those 3. Obviously, the middle pull runner is supposed to help with that. But that guy also has some run responsibilities. And so, here you get Ohio State under center. So you fake the heavy play action. Under center still provides a better play action fake, given the quarterback turns his back than you get from shotgun. That holds the linebacker so he can't get he does not reroute the wide receivers or carry them vertically at all. And it also holds that middle safety. And so now you basically have a 2-for-1 on the safety on the right hash. And as I said, they're releasing the safety runs with Emeka Buka on sort of the wheel and go. And that leaves Jeremiah Smith. As I said, for all the pass protection issues here, right? You get this is a 5-man protection that they hold up well. I will say that I think one of the issues in this game is until probably towards the end, relied very heavily on 5-man half slide protections, which leaves, people can, Nebraska, set it up so that they would get it so that Ohio State had to often set their protection away from Zen Mahosky, which gave their then speed rusher a two-way go against him on an inside or outside move. That was noticeably different than Oregon when he had to come into the game. They used a lot of 6 and 7-man full slide protections to help him out. So anyways, for whether that was a strategic choice or seeing how far they could, push it with the new offensive lineman in the game, they held up here. They gave Will Howard time. This is probably his best deep ball throw of the year. And so they hit this early. They hit the Mills concept early to Carnell Tate, which is like a cover 4 concept where you run a deep in and a post behind it. Again, you're sort of stretching that cover 4 safety. And so, with 8 minutes to go in the second quarter, for all the problems, they were up 14-3 off of 2 big pass plays and, moved the ball again before the second half, kicked a field goal. They just didn't have a lot of opportunities. So it was really the third quarter where the problem sort of exacerbated.
All right. Well, let's move straight ahead. Let's move ahead in the action, as they say on those condensed broadcasts, straight to the third quarter. And there were a bunch of drives that didn't work at all for Ohio State in the third quarter. This was one of them. This is the interception thrown by Will Howard.
Yeah. And so, again, when we were talking about, well, how does your success rate look so much better, but the score is, you're down to having to score with 6 minutes left to take the lead. Obviously, turnovers have a big effect. Nebraska had a turnover, but it was at the end of the game. Is not quite as a high of leverage situation. Again, credit to Nebraska. I know people don't like to hear that. And it's hard. And this is where I do think advanced stats come in handy because, we're traditionally used to there's a top 25 and there's everyone else, but it's a lot more, nuanced than that. Right. And so Nebraska, if you look at SP plus, they're not good on offense, but they've had a very good defense. And as I said, I think their defensive coordinator does a lot of stuff that maybe we expected Jim Knowles to do when he came to Ohio State. So you get a lot of this 3 high safety coverage variation. And so he had Will Howard fooled a few times. Right. And so they, run this, basically as we showed many times, Chip Kelly likes using this short motion where he kind of gets a stack or changes the leverage, right? And it's basically just like a double seam route with hitches. And so we talked about zone beaters. The problem is that this is not the right read here because pre-snap, right? Nebraska looks like they basically are in a split safety concept. But then at the snap, they drop into what's a 3 buzz or 3 buzz weak, which just means it's cover 3, but one of the safeties is dropping down to that hook zone. And, so Howard thinks he probably has a different coverage than he's getting, and he airmails it. Obviously, Ohio State was able to have a goal line stand here, but, it did, beyond just the interception itself, taking away another drive right away. Ohio State started with the ball on the 1 yard line. The field position was awful in that third quarter, which certainly contributed to both their play calling and just try to, not being able to get out of a hole as much.
We talked about a bunch of different stuff on the post-game show that I thought, oh man, I can't wait to talk to Ross about this to find out if we're right. And one of the things was there were a bunch of plays where it looked like Will Howard either missed a read or just did not have the option of a read on a number of run plays where it felt like they were running and it was like, you're not, this is not how this is probably designed to go, or maybe it is. I'm not sure what that would say if it is. This is one of those plays. We're actually going to be doing 2 plays back to back where it's relatively short yardage and it does not work at all for Ohio State on the ground.
Yeah. And as I said, Day and Kelly both harped on this, third down issue, but I can understand how frustrating it would be. Cause again, it wasn't for all the talk about the run game and the lack of yardage, it's not like they were getting 1 yard or 2 yards running it and they're in 3rd and 8. They were getting 4 or 5 yard gains. It'd be interesting to break down their success rate running it on 1st and 2nd down versus 3rd down. Because it was just they got a bunch of these 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2s, 3rd and 3s that they converted all year. And they weren't able to. And so likewise, when I was watching the game on Saturday, I just kept thinking they just turned off the reliefs and the RPOs. And it's a little bit more complicated than that. Ironically, like the first play of the game was a wide receiver screen to Cornell Tate, and we didn't see another relief thrown like that, a wide receiver screen the rest of the game. What they were doing a lot of instead, though, upon rewatch, was more second or third level RPOs. So like you have those wide receiver screens where it's just like a numbers read, right? Like you have 3/2, you're going to throw it right away. This is more like Will Howard's reading a defender and deciding what to do. So again, like, successful first down play. They're into 2nd and 3 here or so. And I think this is a misread. Like I thought that in doing these 2nd and 3rd level reads, again, like given the amount of coverage variation Nebraska uses, I just think they fooled Howard a few times, to be frank, where like the pull read was there and he didn't take it. And so like this one was more obvious than some. Like they have even pre-snap, right? You have 3/2. Yes, there's a deep safety to that side of the field, but he's not in the play. And then at the snap, Howard's reading that backside linebacker who comes, like he does sit a little bit, but he comes down, and Emeka Egbuka is just sitting there wide open on a hitch. And in fact, like you can kind of see at the very end, Howard sort of like puts his hands on, or he points to Egbuka and says like my bad. Basically, there was another one earlier in the game where they ran an RPO that Egbuka was running a seam route and was wide open for an 80-yard touchdown. And like after the play, that was where Howard put his hands on his head, like, oh man, I really missed that one. But then you can see, so like from the backside or the behind the line of scrimmage angle that I included, like also some of the reasons beyond just like the loss of numbers that Ohio State was having issues in the run game. For whatever reason, a lot of like the run game diversity that we were talking about the first month or 4 to 5 weeks of the season, where like every week I'd come and be like, oh, look, they ran a speed option this week. They ran a trap play. They ran this, like that's gone. It's been gone. I bet they probably ran variations of inside zone over a dozen times in this game, at least. A lot of inside zone, a little bit of outside zone. I don't know if that was, again, like I know Chip Kelly on Tuesdays, like it's all game, opponent specific, what's going to work. Whether it's that, whether it's like keeping things basic because it's Nebraska, like trying to, keep break tendencies for Penn State, whether it's, a new new left tackle, they did to their, to be fair, like the last series of the game, they tried to run that super counter that you and I've talked about, and Tegra Shabola went the wrong way. Like I posted on X, that's just like kind of like Pee Wee League. Like you think the counter play is going to the left and it's going to the right instead, and you pull and knock heads with your guard pulling the other way. Whether, I don't know what the combination was, but like they just got really static and running inside zone to the boundary with like the relief or RPO to the field. And so Nebraska played off of that, right? And so what they would do is they really, like the defense, like to their credit, their defensive tackles controlled the action against the Ohio State offensive guards a lot. Like again, beyond the Zen, who does get beat here, but they kept slanting or stunting, like we talked about the Ohio State defense, right? Like to the boundary with their defensive tackles. And what they wanted to do was cut off any like front side part of the inside zone run. And so then the Ohio State running backs, like just like Henderson here, has to cut back. And then they bring extra pressure off the backside edge, whether it's a linebacker or whether it's a safety. And so you basically running into that unblocked defender. And there was just nothing threatening the front side. And so they could get away sort of with playing around with numbers because they just didn't need to worry as much about, the front side linebacker. And so he could kind of check the run because they could just funnel everything. And so again, they were just missing, they were just missing that run game diversity that could either like push the ball, get it to the perimeter. They ran the same side toss twice. The one Travion Henderson got tripped up. Otherwise it was going to be probably a touchdown run. And, he again, you could see the frustration for him after that play, but both were successful. But other than that, they were missing a lot of that, variety. And so Nebraska was able to just sort of control the line of scrimmage in the run game with their defensive tackles, force the football back into their unblocked pursuit. And again, Ohio State was just missing that sort of those reliefs that could help. I mean, the one other thing I would say about it to like Will Howard not pulling those and like the use of reliefs is like there's numbers and then there's like your players, right? And so like Ohio State, again, I tend to think like regardless of what Chip Kelly says, there's a little bit of rope-a-dope going on here. I don't know how much really 1 week makes a difference. I don't think Penn State's going to like be oblivious to how successful Ohio State's been with those plays. Like clearly there was an effort to minimize those and get the ball to Cornell Tate so that teams aren't rolling coverage as much. But like your best players are out wide. You're really good at those perimeter plays. I think especially with like the offensive line struggles you're having, like you got to force the ball to the perimeter, like even regardless necessarily of what the read shows. Like Will Howard was aggressive in throwing those reliefs. I thought he was a little bit more gun shy with the second level stuff. Maybe he wasn't quite seeing it as well in that quick of time with all the different things Nebraska was doing. But I think they need to get back, as I'll show here again, to those, quick game wide receiver screens as well.
All right, so we are going to hit that next one, which is illustrating the point Ross just brought up, and it is literally the next play. They went from a second and 3 to a third and medium or so, and then did not convert it here on this third down.
Yeah, and so again, like this one does have wide receiver screens attached, but again, there's a couple issues. So again, I don't know. Pre-snap, maybe it's just the late movement. I just didn't think Howard was quite seeing him as well. Here you have the front side, again, is Nebraska not covering up those numbers. So, if it's a pre-snap relief, like he should be able to turn and pull and throw this right away to Emeka Egbuka to the boundary. Again, like you're falling into this sort of run to the boundary, throw the relief to the field dichotomy all the time that you need to change it up. Like, tendencies that we've talked about in a variety of contexts are bad. But then Nebraska, again, like they're playing the same games, right? So like they basically take the front side linebacker out on this play to help with that wide receiver screen and not worry about it because they know their defensive tackles can force the football back inside and then they're bringing 2 off the edge. And so they don't show cover 1 until late, but they bring like the defensive end to account for Henderson on the run and let him crash. But then they also have a +1 in the safety there to help. And so, I think this situation might not be the best one to illustrate this other point that I would make. But Nebraska was really guessing, and often they guessed well that like when they thought Ohio State was going to run, they played like a pretty aggressive cover 1. And I don't think Ohio State's wide receivers are too good to let teams get away with that. Like we saw on the other side with Nebraska, like when they saw like pretty obvious cover 1, they pull it on the RPO and would just throw like a back shoulder hitch or a back shoulder go route outside. And like Jeremiah Smith, when he's singled up like that, like it should be an option in their RPO game to basically pull it and throw a vertical route to him. Like I just don't think they're just letting teams get away with too much playing games when like and not threatening them enough outside when there's no reason for that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really did wonder about in the moments after the game and during our post-game show was the moment that I pulled up the final box score and they had targeted Jeremiah Smith 4 times throughout the course of the game and had not handed the ball to him at any point, and it was like, that feels like a real missed opportunity. I know you can't just go in and say, we're going to put the ball in his hand 10 times, especially when you don't get very many snaps, but 4 felt like probably not enough targets. The next play is actually one of those 4 targets. This was actually the only incompletion to Jeremiah Smith. So what do you think? Can they go in and say, hey, we have to get the ball to him, at least try to get the ball to him X number of times? Or is that just, given what defenses can try to do, you got to sort of adjust to that and you can't just go in with a hard and fast, we have to do X amount of times getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in between. Again, this game, it's super skewed by the numbers. And I think this was the game where they didn't want to purposely do that because they didn't want to put those things on film. But like using the Iowa game as a comparison where Smith didn't get the ball early, they threw him the tunnel screen. They gave him the reverse. Those are the kind of things that I do think there's ways to just getting the ball. As I said, I would personally like force the now screens and stuff, even if it's like 3 over 3, like see what happens. Those wide receivers break tackles all the time and the perimeter blocking's good, especially when the run game is struggling. again, though, I think the problem is, and I think this is maybe a case of it, like in the passing game, Howard does want to lock on at times to Smith and Ibuka. And it's sort of being, exacerbated. I grabbed this play because the problem Ohio State was having in these like third and short situations was it wasn't just the run game that was failing. I know that's been a lot of the focus, but they misfired on several passing plays. This one, they, again, I think Nebraska fooled them. And like, I want to give Nebraska credit. Again, I don't think Howard sees what looks like it could be like a 3 high, and you tend to think, again, Tampa 2, right? And so there's a concept Chip Kelly keeps using. We showed it against Oregon multiple times. Like you run the smash to the boundary, which is like the corner route with like a hitch or a short out, and then these like double in breakers from the field, right? And so against cover 2, like we talked about against Oregon, you want to throw the smash route. But the problem is Nebraska here is not in cover 2. They're in another 3 high concept, which is like cover 3, but with both cornerbacks clouded up, like they're playing the flat like it's cover 2, but it's actually cover 3. And so now that smash concept isn't great against that because you have that deep outside defender. And so this is one where he needs to work off that, come off Smith, and come back to the middle of the field. Like you can see G. Scott coming open over the middle. Quinshon Judkins is actually sitting wide open in the flat. All this to say is like, it's not perfect. Actually, you see like Zen Milosky do a much better job here handling the inside move and pass protection. So like it did, I don't think, I think there's plenty of examples that we all can point to of his struggles, of other offensive line struggles. But I do think there was like more layers on Saturday to the issues than just to be like, it was just because of the new left tackle. I think that it was in some ways a very complex game plan from Nebraska against Ohio State trying to be very base. And that certainly contributed to issues as well. But, these are just the situations where it's hard to say, like, it's just chance, but like, they convert one of these first third downs and get going, and who knows what happens. Like I see that all the time, right? When I'm rewatching games, it's like, they're lucky they got this third down, and that kept an 8-play drive going. And so, this drive, then the next one, Ibuka was actually open and Howard kind of airmailed it. He got a little bit of pressure. And so, sometimes you just have these bad run of luck as well, or, what would have been if you convert one or two of these.
Well, there was a drive in the second half where they did convert one or two of these, and that was the drive where Nebraska had just scored to take the lead. And it felt like, boy, this could be a season-defining drive for Ohio State. And they went right down the field and put a touchdown on the board. But it all started with converting that first down. And that was on a long pass to Carnell Tate on a wheel route. So let's run through that one.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, as I said, like they hit those big ones early. I think Nebraska, in some ways, was trying to take away the run and was giving them these opportunities. But again, like, for all the coverage diversity Nebraska was using, when they were able to find the right zone beaters against what they were doing, they hit some big opportunities. So, the first thing to notice about this play is Ohio State. You can see things on this drive they learned from earlier in the game. So it's not like they forgot how to coach football, right? So they use a 7-man protection here. G. Scott actually bumps inside of Zen Milosky so that he doesn't have to worry about a 2-way move. So he can just worry about setting outside, and G. Scott's going to check that C gap before he releases. And then Quinshon Judkins is helping on the other side. But then again, so like they got cover 3 earlier, like a few times, right? Where they didn't quite expect it. So now they expect the cover 3, they get it, and they run this wheel route. And so the cover 3 corner is going to carry Smith down the field. And, the guy goes, the safety goes and plays the flat. There's just no one on Carnell Tate. And so again, coulda, woulda, shoulda, as I said, there were probably opportunities throughout the game that they could have pushed the ball downfield more so than they did. But obviously when they needed to do it, they were able to go back to the well.
And one other place then, when they really needed to do it, they did do it, is this play, our final play for today. This is one where it felt like a lot of the day Will Howard was giving. This is one where Will Howard kept it. had a nice pickup on what ended up being the game-winning touchdown drive.
Yeah, and this should look very similar to that third is short that they got stopped that I showed you earlier. And because it is, and again, Ohio State learned from that situation, right? So again, they're in the pistol. And so they expect Nebraska to do the same thing, right? Which is like they're going to bring their defensive tackles are going to move towards the boundary to try to cut off the front side run. They're going to slant down the backside defensive end to account for the running back, and then bring the safety off the edge +1 for Howard, right? And so here, though, unlike before where Ohio State ran it from 2x2 open and had the two reliefs, here they're going to run split zone and have G. Scott block back on that defensive end. And so what happens now that guy's no longer accounting for the running back. And so now the safety has to account for the running back because you have an extra gap. And that allows Howard to keep and turn upfield. And so you get a big gain. And so it was a game where because they weren't able to get some of those conversions, they could not get to doing these like sort of counter moves to what Nebraska was doing until, it was, they had to, I guess. But they fortunately had the drive here where they could, before their backs were too far up against the wall.
All right, so there you have it. A supersized Ross Fulton analysis show on the Ohio State offense. One of the mini shows you're getting this week from our friends at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also want to thank our friends at Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus today. We will have another Ross Fulton show later on in the week. We're going to do the defensive breakdown. We got to figure out the schedule. It is a crazy week. We're traveling. It's a mess. We'll figure it out. We'll get you another Ross Fulton show a little later on in the week. We're going to have plenty more coverage for you all week long at BuckeyeHuddle.com, dropping a bunch of bonus shows. We'll have our usual bold predictions, Buckeye Weekly show. We're going to be in State College on Friday for the Buckeyes team arrival. Lots of coverage coming up for you all week long at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We hope to see you in both of those places. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.